Really interesting fight, and I'm serious about this one. We have a crossroads fight at middleweight, and I don't think it's out of the question to say that it's a crossroads fight. We have Poland's The Butcher, Bartosz Fabinski, a guy that trains at a WCA with the likes of Jan Blachowicz and Marian Zielkowski, and some of the bigger guys training out of Poland, and he's taking on Rufus Sports, GM3, Gerald Meerschaert, and Matt. For both of these guys, they are ground fighters and grapplers at the highest level. For Bartosz Fabinski, you know how high level his judo is. And listen, you have Judo Thunder on the main card with Abdul, Razak, Alhassan. But there's a close second with Fabinski, and for Gerald Meerschaert, very good at defensive submissions. If I've ever seen anybody that looked like Alton Lister in a basketball game, Khamzat Chimaev went full Sean Kemp over poor old Gerald Meerschaert in Meerschaert's last campaign. Listen, he's 2-3 in his last 5. The losses aren't really the best. He lost a split to Eric Anders. Sometimes that's going to happen. He also lost by finish against Bangkok ready Ian Heinisch. And that's going to happen too. The Chimaev one's tough, but they had him ranked against, or set to take on, a number 3 ranked welterweight. So for Meerschaert, you're coming into a fight with, I'd say, lower expectations than normal. How high could expectations ever be on Gerald?
No, that's a good point. And I think we are two of the bigger Gerald Meerschaert fans out there.
I don't know if I'd say fans.
Maybe not fans, but just apologists, if you will. I do think Gerald Meerschaert is a good MMA fighter. I really do, because he offers a fighter a lot of different looks. And just he's kind of good at everything. And yeah, you talk about his jiu-jitsu. The wrestling might not be great. I don't think the striking of Gerald Meerschaert's terrible. I don't. And look at his win against Duran Win. His striking was the thing that set up the submission to beat Win. Go back and look at that fight. He's getting absolutely dominated on the feet, because here's the one thing I will say. Gerald Meerschaert is slow. He is slower than molasses on a cold winter day, to quote all the old people in our lives throughout just the majority of my life. But it's true. Gerald Meerschaert, speed is something he has a problem with. You look at a lot of his losses in the UFC. Yeah, he's lost to guys like Khamzat Chimaev, like Thiago Santos, like really high-level fighters. But those are all fighters who are much faster than him. Even Ian Heinisch, the thing that gave Gerald Meerschaert trouble in that fight, I thought if anything was going to give him trouble, it would be the takedown defense of Heinisch, and he would force Meerschaert to become a striker. Well, no, Ian Heinisch just went out there, kicked his front leg a bunch, hit him with an overhand, and that was about it. Speed is a problem for Gerald Meerschaert. And at 33 years of age, he might be 33, but in MMA years, he is quite a bit older than that. He's been in a lot of hard fights throughout his career. But this fight for me comes down to one thing. Can Meerschaert get on top of Fabinski? Whether he does that through a reversal of one of Fabinski's takedown attempts, whether he gets onto a guillotine and maybe forces Fabinski to go to his back to roll out of it, those are really the only places I see Meerschaert winning this fight. Because on paper, this fight is just going to be a lot of Fabinski taking down Meerschaert over and over and over, and probably over again up against the cage. If you're just asking for an X's and O's of this fight, I see Fabinski probably getting over 5 takedowns. But the real question comes down to, can Meerschaert get one of those defensive submissions on the way down, or can he reverse and sweep Fabinski from bottom?
For Bartosz Fabinski, he only loses to Brazilian grapplers. If you want to look at his last 5 fights, that's the funny thing, because for the 5 on in for both these guys, for Gerald Meerschaert, his 5th to last fight was a year and 8 months ago. For Bartosz Fabinski, it was 5 years and 4 months ago. The guy had a lot of layoffs. And if you look at it, I remember Fabinski for his UFC debut. He fought Gareth McLennan, and he beat the shit out of him.
It was bad.
He beat him bad. And then you look at the last 5. He beats Hector Urbina, forgettable.
Not good.
He beats Emil Mack. That was a good win. It really was.
A billion times.
He loses to Michel Prazeres, a guy who has a fight coming up. He beats Darren Stewart, and then he loses to Muniz. He beat the brakes off Darren Stewart.
He did.
That fight wasn't even close. So if you want a really good idea of Bartosz Fabinski, we talk about these fighters as a position over submission. Fabinski's all position, and then once he gets to position, it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm here. Do I submit him? Do I start punching him? It's like he kind of gets confused, and at the single second where he gets confused, sometimes it gives the other fighter a chance to get up. When he fought Andrea Muniz, I'm going to take him down, and then we end up in this clinch position, and then I'm going to just sink deeper for the takedown, and then Muniz gets him into a submission. It ends up on the mat, and then Fabinski tries to get up, and he gets an arm, and it was a triangle, and then he gets his arm, and he gets the armbar win. Gerald Meerschaert can do all of those things that Muniz did. It's going to be a really interesting one. I mean, both of these guys, it's funny. Fabinski, less fights, older guy.
Exactly.
Meerschaert, older in fight years. Rufus Sport, one of the main guys as far as grappling's concerned. I love the fight because it's judo against jiu-jitsu. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
One thing that I really like about Gerald Meerschaert is that even if he didn't fight in MMA, he would still have a job in MMA. Like, Gerald Meerschaert, I don't want to say he's one of the unsung heroes of MMA, but he really does have one of those jobs where, like, he's the grappling trainer at Rufus Sport. He probably doesn't have to fight. Like, he's just a really good trainer. They like having him around. He's good for the guys there. And when guys go to Rufus Sport, for the longest time, it was, you went there only for striking. That's all they would ever offer. Well, Gerald Meerschaert's really shown that guys at Rufus Sport can show a little bit more. They are decent grapplers. They are decent wrestlers. There is more than just a striking camp there. So for Meerschaert, I think we are going to see a little bit of his striking in this fight. I do think he will be able to defend some of the takedowns of Fabinski. I know that's weird because for Meerschaert, you might assume, well, oh, he kind of wants to get taken down throughout this fight. But one thing I do think Meerschaert will be able to do over Fabinski is if he can defend some takedowns early, the gas tank of Meerschaert's not terrible. Now, it's not great. I know I said he's slow. He doesn't have the best output in the world, but he is a consistent fighter round between round. And the thing about Fabinski is he can come very takedown heavy in that first round, and if he's not getting a lot of them, you can force him to become not a primary striker by any means, but he will strike with you a little bit more on the outside, and that will give you an opportunity to hurt him. Now, I will say this. I think Fabinski's probably going to win this fight. I think he will get a lot of takedowns and probably just completely out-wrestle Meerschaert, but Meerschaert's going to have those Paul Craig areas to win this fight, and that's the thing that you have to watch out for.
If you look at this fight, and this might be a surprise to a lot of people, Gerald Meerschaert's tied for #1 in middleweight history with most submission wins. He's got 5 of them. He is tied with Shoeface, Talis Leites, Rusamar Palhares, and Damian Maia. How crazy is that? All of them with 5. He could break the record here this weekend. If we have a look at the odds, Matt, Bartosz Fabinski open to -150. He's now a -134. So Fabinski's still the favorite. The money coming on Meerschaert, who opened a +130. He's now a +109. And again, I like the defensive submission abilities from Meerschaert. From Bartosz Fabinski, it's 1A or it's 1B, and that's what scares me away from him. So for me, I'm going to do the cheap one. I'm going to do the cop-out. I'm going to do over 1.5 on the fight.
Pick, Craig?
Don't care. Doing over 1.5, and that's my official pick.
I'll pick Bartosz Fabinski. I like the wrestling advantage. My problem is Meerschaert is so good at jiu-jitsu, but he does lack the transition of wrestling to really get on top of a lot of guys. And the places that we have seen Meerschaert have success is if he can hit his opponents to the ground, get a knockdown, maybe a stun, then he can get a drop. And then we can see him really work his jiu-jitsu on the ground. The wrestling has been a problem. Now, yes, even go back to the Ryan James fight. He was on his back in that fight and he was able to get his submission, but a lot of his submissions off his back aren't to the level of grappler as Bartosz Fabinski. I think if Fabinski can at least stay out of the full guard of Gerald Meerschaert, he can avoid some of those submissions, so I like Fabinski in this fight.
I also like Fabinski. I'm still going over 1.5 in my own life. We're both going with Poland's Bartosz Fabinski to get the win. Really interesting fight, and it is a crossroads at middleweight, so you're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night picks because in our main event, big time middleweight banger, you have Kelvin Gastelum taking on Robert Whittaker. Let's keep it locked in, and as we always say, let's get into it.